Today we're going to be changing out a starter motor in a 1990 Mazda Miata, and the same procedure should apply for 1990 through 1997. Here's the new starter that we've got. Looks like it's got one through hole, two tapped holes, not sure yet exactly how many of those are used. And then on the back, there's a couple smaller studs here that are attached to about an 1/8 inch thick steel bracket that bolts onto the block to support the back of the starter toward the front of the car. And then here's the connection from the battery, and there's a slip-on connection here for the solenoid cable. So I'm going to be doing most of the work from up above here under the intake manifold, and we've got the car up on ramps because you do have to get underneath there and get a wrench on some of these bolts, and I'm going to try and pull the starter motor out from the front underneath the car. So the first thing we're going to do is take out the bolt that holds the bracket on the back of the starter to the engine block, and it's the one there. It's just about 7 o'clock from the oil filter, and it's the top bolt there. There's two of them, 14mm head, and try to get it from up top with a ratchet and a socket, but it was too tight, so had a guy get under the car, put a box wrench on it with a pipe extension, broke it loose, and then got it out the rest of the way with a ratchet and a 14mm socket. Next we're going to pull off the slip-on connector for the starter solenoid wire, and then we're going to disconnect the battery cable that goes to the starter motor. This is the slide-on connector for the solenoid wire, and going to pull that off and then disconnect the battery cable, which is this upper stud here, and strangely enough that takes a 1/2 inch wrench. Everything else seems to be metric, so we're going to go ahead and do that. So we've disconnected the wires from the solenoid and the battery, and now we're going to take the nut off that's on the bottom of the starter. And we've got two long extensions and a 14mm combination universal and socket 6-point, and a man under the car with a ratchet, and he's going to break that free and pull off that nut off that bottom stud there on the starter. So we had to switch over to a 1/2 inch extension because the 3/8 was just torquing up too much and wouldn't transmit the torque to snap the nut loose on the stud. So got like probably 20 inches of extension in there, and had to get a long handled 1/2 inch ratchet, and finally broke it free. So go ahead and turn that so they can see how it works there. Yeah. Car owner's underneath the car doing all the bull work. Oh, and for you watching the video, the bolt head's turning on the other side, so we're going to have to get a wrench down on that. Stand by. So that the whole bolt was turning. We had to get another guy down underneath the car behind the front wheels with a 14mm open end wrench to hold the bolt head, while the other man was under the front of the car with the long extension and a 14mm socket on the universal, and got that nut off finally. Next we're going to remove the bolts that come from the back of the car into the starter. It's the tapped holes in the starter. One is already out there, taken out. That one that's about in the middle of the screen right now. We already moved that. You have to have a 14mm socket with a universal, and preferably a 1/2 inch extension and 1/2 inch ratchet. The other one is up from that, way up in there. So 14mm again. And probably going to want to have a guy up front holding that starter when you take the last bolt out so it doesn't fall down. This is the bracket on the back of the starter motor. This is the first bolt that we took out in the procedure. So what we're going to need to do now is remove this whole bracket assembly from the old starter. 8mm socket. Transfer it over onto the new one. Make sure you put it on right side up. Oops. Okay, now we're ready to put your new starter in.
Just FYI to anyone who happened to notice the giant holes in our splash pan. That was intentionally created for this job.
So, got the car underneath there. It's got the new starter. It's going to put it up, feed it in through the guarding underneath there, the plastic and everything. And at least get it up close to being in position and do final positioning from the top up here. So don't even attempt this job if you're by yourself. You're never going to get it done. You have to have at least 2 people, maybe 3 if you're filming. Okay. Then you're going to have a guy from the top holding the starter position, guy underneath putting those 2 big bolts back in from the rear, from between the transmission and the frame. We've got all 3 of the main bolts that hold the starter in place put in now, and we'll go back and put in the first bolt that we took out, the one that holds the bracket that's at the back of the starter down to the left from the oil filter. For putting the 3 bolts in that hold the starter motor in place from underneath there down by the transmission. For the top one, what you really need is a deep socket, 14mm, preferably 6-point. Always use 6-point if you can. With a universal, and then with the 1/2-inch extensions and 1/2-inch ratchet. For the bottom one, I'd recommend using one of these if you have it. It's a 14mm combination socket and universal. Get in a little closer and less chance of torquing around. But you really got to have a 1/2-inch drive set to do all this stuff, because the 3s, you just end up torquing your extensions and things. So we've got the bracket on that holds the back of the starter. And now we're going to rehook the wiring, the large wire that comes from the battery and goes to the top terminal there, the big copper terminal, and then we're going to plug in the solenoid connector. Make sure that you disconnect the battery before you do any of this work, because if you pull that positive off there and hit it on ground, it's going to be bad news. We forgot to say that in the beginning, but we'll put something in about that. And okay, we're going to hook them up. Okay. So, last step after hooking up the wiring is to reinstall your negative battery cable. You always want to disconnect the negative, not the positive. And if you're taking your battery in or out, you always want to disconnect the negative first, reconnect it last. That way, when you're doing the positive, you hit the wrench on the frame, it doesn't short circuit, right? Okay, ready to try it out. So here's the new starter, totally installed.
and we'll get it down off the ramps and try it out.
Yep. Ready, Miyagi?
Yeah.
Okay, here we go. Try it out. There you have it. That annoying Miata exhaust sound once again.